Are we good?
Good.
All right, I would like to call to order the Thursday, September 24th meeting of the City Council Committee of the Whole discussing 2021 capital borrowing. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Alder Goforth.
Here.
Alder Wood.
Here.
Alder Coor.
Here.
Alder Thomas.
Here.
Alder Groupie.
Here.
Alder Moore.
Here.
Mayor O'Connor.
Here. Okay, I think we will start out with our usual overview by Mark. And Mark, were you going to put this up on the screen, or did everyone see the PowerPoint that Mark sent this afternoon?
Up there, just one second. Share it.
Yeah, Mark, you can just on the bottom of your screen where it says the green share screen tab, just click on that and then it can give you the ability to show the PowerPoint up on the screen.
Oh, okay. Before we first get started, I just kind of want to go through what the process is and how this works, and where we started and got to this budget. First of all, this is considered the mayor's budget. The one thing with the mayor, they're able to propose the operating and the capital budgets. So they have the final say of putting the budget together. But the process is each department head went through the committees. They probably went once or twice to their committees. The committees approved that. They were given to myself. I put them all together. We did some analysis on it. And then each department head sits down, meets with the mayor, goes over kind of what we're going to do tonight, one by one of each individual item that's been approved by the committees. And from there, we make changes based on some of our goals. And some of our goals, I'm going to start this here. One of our goals is to keep the borrowing down between 1.5 million to 2 million, excluding stormwater. So basically general fund only. The reason why we're trying to do this is one, what's kind of going on with St. Damiani, what the future is going to hold for there. Are we going to be doing a public safety building? So we want to keep, our debt capacity low, and also just for taxpayers, the burden and levies on these debt actually, goes onto debt service. So there's an increase to the debt service. So that's some of our goals. Our total general obligation borrowing, excluding utilities, is 2,231,000. So we got pretty close. There's a couple things in there that we had to do. Unfortunately, they were kind of 2020 budgets, but they were projects, but they were more than what needed more money. So we moved them to 2021 or included on this 2021. We also really focused on 2022 to 2025. We did make a lot of changes in those years. 95% of those changes are related to parks and public works. The reason for that, again, is kind of one of our goals is what the future holds for St. Damiani. We need to make sure we have enough capital available, make sure everything's there. And we also, one of our goals is the public safety building. We kind of want to make sure we're able to afford all that and make sense when we borrow for that. We're not getting too much onto the levy at one time. So as far as there's a state law, you're only allowed to borrow up to 5% of your equalized value. So this page right here kind of shows what our debt capacity is. So our equalized value, the current equalized value is 1,451,000,000. And so that means we have a capacity of 72,550,000. So what our outstanding debt is as of 2020 at the end of the year, what our 2000 outstanding debt general obligation would be 50,840,000. We're allowed to deduct the 2021 principal payments, 5,845,000. But we also have to add into our bands. These are short-term notes that will be eventually refinanced. S&P is now saying they should be included when they do the analysis. I included it in here. I'll come back to that in just a second. So our total net general obligation outstanding is 56,720,000. You can see our legal capacity is 72,550,000. So our available amount is 15,800,000. So give us unused legal capacity about 22%. I'm kind of going back to this general obligation bands. These are related to TIF number 9. They're currently bands, but we will be refinancing probably most of them in 2021. And we're going to refinance them as TIF revenue bonds, so they will no longer be subject to this debt limit capacity. So in reality, once we do that, our capacity is $26 million. With that, I hope that makes sense. Hopefully that makes sense.
However, we will still owe that money.
We will still owe that money up. It'll be paid through the TIF revenues, would be where it's coming from. So here's the breakout of our debt as of end of the year. What it would be, the city's portion is almost 23 million. You can see each TIF, how much you owe for each TIF 4 through 9, and storm and water. There's sometimes we borrow for storm, the utilities. We don't use revenue bonds. Sometimes if it's a small borrowing, it doesn't make sense for us to do a revenue bond. So that's why there's amounts in here for utilities. These are the bands or revenue bonds. So we do have, as you can see here, we have 100,000 left in TIF 4 for revenue bonds. And then TIF 9, that's when the big ones will refinancing here. This 2021 is 11,625,000. And these are sewer and water revenue bonds that we have. So we do have an additional 17 million out there in debt. And so if you break up all the debt by revenue bonds, bands, general obligation, as you can see, 50% is TIF related. So half our debt is TIF related, and that's paid back through increment. As of right now, with the donor districts being approved, there is no fear of anything that we would not make payments on these donor or on these TIFs. So they will be paid back in full without using any money from the taxpayers, all paid through the TIF increment program. As you can see, 35% general related and the 50% is utility related. So you can see kind of our breakout of our principal payments from 2021 to 2027. See some bigger payments in 2023, 24, 25. There's going to be some bigger TIF payments coming down the line. So here's breaking out by each different sources. So 2021, you can see we're going to pay almost 2.9. This is principal only. TIF is 2.2, water and so on. These numbers will match into the previous page before. So that. This is kind of confusing. This part of the file, but just kind of shows. It's on page 2 here. So this is based on our total numbers. The total amount of capital projects is 5,734,675. So it's broken down by these various sources. General obligation in column 1, or 2021 column, is the 2.2 million. TIF is 25,000. We probably won't borrow for that, even though I technically have it in the borrowing. We have enough money in cash in hand for that. Storm is 1.2. Other revenues, we're borrowing needed. A lot of it's going to be some carryovers. We'll get into that when we talk about the public safety. You'll see where that number is coming from. And cable, we don't borrow for. That's paid through franchise fees. And then the water and sewer revenue bonds, water's 546,000, sewer's 352,000. So the total affected, including the sewer, including the stormwater, total borrowing we would need to affect the limit. We have to add in the stormwater and the general obligation is $3,541,655. So that brings our capacity is 15,830,895. I guess I don't have the next line on there, the unused amounts on page 2 on your book, we would have left over 12,289,000. Plus if you add in 11 million, we'd have, have those bands, we're up to, around 23 million, some change. In 2022, you can see our capacity be 14 million, in 2023, 11 million, 8 million, but you got to add an 11 million for each year for those. So we have plenty of capacity for any borrowing that we have. Capacity will not be an issue for us. Here's one thing that will impact is, so this is the impact on the debt service levy. And this is a 2001 capital budget borrowing of $2,230,000. Says $12 per 100,000, and I have one for each year. Matches the amounts per year. What this is, when you borrow in 2021, that $12 per 100,000 does not hit into the 2022 budget because you're borrowing in 2021. We're not actually levying for that money as part of your debt service. We don't have a principal and interest schedule yet. We don't have the money. So that actually goes on to next year. So in 2022 would be the $12 impact on that per 100,000. So it's always a 1-year lag with that.
And Mark,
Yes.
could you go back one page? You talked about down at the bottom, the unused capacity in 22 and beyond.
Yeah.
Add 11 million to that number.
Yeah, that would be the band number that eventually is going to be converted to TIFs. So is that 11 million?
How does that add unused capacity?
Because we'll free up capacity. Once we refinance those into revenue bonds, then they'll turn into, they will no longer affect that capacity.
All right.
We'll add $11 million into that number.
Okay. Thanks.
So the impact on the water rates or utility rates, we're currently in the process of our water rate case. That was delayed getting in, just so you're aware. The reason why was we had to do so we're doing new meters. We had to file the PSC to get approval to do that. So I waited to get the approval first because there was at one time we said we might maybe not get approved for that. So in the analysis, I didn't want to include us the water rate, the water meters being included, including the debt with that, and then say no, you can't do it yet, and then the rates will not match up. So they're still in the process of reviewing that. Hopefully we'll get some information on that soon. No sewer rate increases. Stormwater, there's a large increase for stormwater, 15 to 20. The reason why that is there's a big project in the stormwater utility. It's over $1 million. We borrow basically $200,000-300,000 per year in stormwater. So in 1 year, we're borrowing about 4 or 5 years worth of debt we have for stormwater. So to be able to start paying that back, it is going to be an increase to the stormwater rates. And here's kind of our list of our borrowing since 2014. And this is each year where we've been focusing on since 2014, 2020. So there's some larger items in the capital budget we'll be talking about. $75,000 for the city hall library HVAC. That's been going on for a couple of years now. We kind of pointed out a little bit in the finance committee when we're going over the bills. We do pay a lot. There's always something breaking. So hopefully a lot of this stuff will be fixed and we'll save some money there. I forgot to take out the radio upgrades from last year. 308,000 street maintenance. Last year was really low because of some of the projects we were doing. Now we're kind of getting back up to normal. 434,000 for Monona Drive. This was delayed. So included it to 2021. Bridge replacement. This also was delayed. I think we borrowed, I don't remember what we borrowed last year. It was a budget like 800,000 last year. All the bids were a lot higher. So we were not able to do do that project in 2020. We still have the ash tree removal for 75,000. We have a water tower painting. Here's this Gateway Green Stormwater project that's been talked about here for, I think, at least 5 years in Stonebridge Park. That is combined with Public Works and Parks, that number. Page 3 of the summary, there's a list of changes. There's basically 3 items that were added to the budget. Engineering speed humps at various locations. I didn't put it as a highlight this. We did add Owen Road was added to it, to that location. I think there's 6 already in there. We added 7 for Owen Road. Rapid flash beacon was added. San Damiani planning was added for 50,000. If you go to page 3 too, the summary, we'll see where some of the things have been removed. There's not a lot of big dollar ones. We're just going to, we're looking at some of the projects that, you know, like this Sutter Beach Waterman Park design. We kind of have to look at what the next year was going to cost us. You know, with everything going on with some other projects in the parks, we thought this was good to move it back for a couple of years. Park Moore, we moved back for a year, and pool concession area expansion, we moved back until we figure kind of know what's going on with COVID-19, and building envelope study are some of the bigger dollar items that I included in here. Here's some future items that are in the budgets. You know, 2022 and 2003, we're looking again for HVAC, a little over 700,000. And so that project will be continuing. We do over 2 years at public safety building design, 400,000 in 22 and 400,000 in 23. There's a fire engine coming in, 850,000. Winnequa Road, 100 is also included in 2022. 2023 was one of the areas that's a big year. One of the reasons why we're focusing on moving a lot of that stuff around is Tony Watha. Those roads back there being redone, in Broadway with the county. The two combined is roughly $3 million in 2023. So we do have some larger projects coming with some of the current situations.
Mark, is going back to South Winnequa, there's a typo there someplace. Is that 350,000, $1,350,000?
Oh, yep, that should be in zero. 1,350,000.
Okay, thank you.
Just potential borrowing, you know, depends what our plans is eventually with the public safety building, San Damiani, if there's any more TIF agreements, any more TIF projects that come up, any future capital projects, or if there's any emergency funding like we found out we needed this year. So things to look at. And other things that kind of just repeating the same thing we just talked about, you know, it's kind of hitting those topics again. If you have questions.
Anyone? I can't see you all. If someone else is. It doesn't look like it. If no one has any questions, we can move on then to Diane, who will talk about the senior center budget. And this is on page 91. Your book.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, Diane.
Okay, so we're just doing 2021. So the two things we have proposed for 2021 are senior center signage and painting. So let me just start to describe the signage situation. The Parks and Rec Department or the community center has been focusing on the child care, whether it's after school care or they're currently doing the link, you know, they're helping kids during the day. So the front door of our building, which is the most visible entrance to the community center, is locked. And it's not easy for people to realize there are 2 other entrances to our building, to the lower level, to the senior center. Some of you might not even realize to enter the senior center now, you actually kind of go around the back of the building. The signage around these grounds are not real clear. That there's even a senior center here. So Molly helped with some expertise in her realm of people that she knew, and we had some design put into improving signage. So we want to do something right at the front of the building that says the senior center, you need to enter around the back. Signage so that we're trying to have the main entrance from the parking lot that's right across from the library on Nichols Road. So we're hoping to put a sign right where that condenser unit is. It's an eyesore anyway from our ground standpoint. So a signage there. And then down this walkway that people enter from, there would be like an overhead sign that says Monona Senior Center. There's a metal door. We've had seniors say it's to the maintenance room, like where the heating and air conditioning is. They're thinking that's our entrance door. So putting a magnetic sign on there. So just really beefing up the signage at the community center. So TAPCO gave some art renderings, which is in your packet, of what that would look like. It would match the signage that we do have here in the city and here in our parking lot. So I spoke with Jake and Dan and with Public Works helping us for install. I think TAPCO would be willing to drop the things off so we would save on shipping. So pretty reasonably priced project. We had originally budgeted 5,000, but I think 2,500, which was the changed capital, will be fine. I think we're going to be fine with that amount.
Did you ever get an estimate from TAPCO?
I did.
No, we talked, you didn't have one yet, so.
Right. Well, I had an estimate, but he didn't include the shipping, the poles, the
Okay.
mounting brackets, and install. So Dan said that his staff would install, they would help us find brackets. Everybody seemed to say they would help us make things happen. So I think that amount that's budgeted would be fine.
That's okay. Okay. Yeah, Jake had budgeted 1,500 for it, and Diane budgeted 5,000. So I thought, well, I'll split the difference because we didn't have an actual estimate at that I saw anyway. So if that's,
Right. I mean,
I'm sure if it's somewhat more, we can find a little more somewhere. So.
Right. Yeah. So I had part of his estimate, but he didn't do all my signs. But yeah, good there. And then painting. Last year, it was recommended that it go to operating, and this year happened, and it seems like operating is not looking very promising. So great time. If early next year we're still a little low on participants, great time to get a fresh coat of paint. I think it's been probably 8 years. So we'll try to get her done in 2021. Any questions for me on that?
Anybody? I guess not. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Next up is Leah, who is going to talk about information technology. That's on page 22. Leah, are you there? Or if you are, you're on mute and we can't hear you. Leah?
Just trying to get a hold of her.
Okay.
Off mute.
She's off mute, yeah. I just soon do her and Ryan next because Brad's is pretty lengthy.
Before Leah gets on to get hold of Leah, two things happened with this. We did make it a budget amendment. We did take some money off. There was a bunch of laptops on there. I don't remember the exact amount. It was $8,000 worth. With the CARES Act, we are going to put that money through as CARES Act because people are working home. They need to work from home with laptops. So we took that out of the, that number was reduced. So we reduced that. We are getting these laptops here before November. So to get reimbursed from the CARES Act.
We're trying to find as many ways to spend CARES Act dollars as we can, right?
Yes, and there's a server, and she'll talk about the server too. It's currently in the budget. I know me and Mary talked about, and I was wrong, I guess. I thought it was a different server, but we're not 100% sure that one will be reimbursed, but I'm probably close to 95%
Okay,
reimbursed
that's
through
fine.
CARES
Yep,
Act.
I'll
So
let you know. Okay. yeah,
goal would
okay.
be, if we leave it in there, would be to, if we do get it, we just not borrow for it and take it out.
Leah's here, but her video and audio are gonna act a little weird, so she's gonna call in via phone. So I'll let her in 1 second when she dials in.
Okay, thank you. So is it just one of the servers, Mark? Is that right?
No, they're gonna try both. We're gonna try
You're gonna
both.
try both? Okay.
Yeah. We have until November to have everything done. So we're looking at all kinds of things.
Great.
Okay, here she is.
All right. Welcome, Leah.
Hi, Mary. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
I'm going to turn my volume down here. Okay. Kind of fitting that the person who's doing IT tonight can't get her computer and audio to work, isn't it?
Sure is.
Sorry about that, everybody. Well, I can see all your smiling faces. It's nice to see you. It's been a while. Okay, so IT budget for this year. So I think I heard Mark kind of prefacing this already. We're in a good place IT-wise. We don't have any big projects that we need to be looking at for 2021, which is great. COVID kind of did a little bit of number on us this year, IT-wise. I think that we did fine, but we could have been further prepared. We don't have a ton of mobile devices in terms of laptop computers and computers with webcams and microphones. So we found ourselves struggling a little bit with that because we did have quite a few employees who worked from home for at least some part of March and April. So originally in the budget that I submitted to the mayor, I had 10 laptops, additional laptops, so that basically every employee that could be working from home with a device was able to access a device. But not only that, but we're also finding that because of COVID, so many more meetings are going online now and trainings and things like that. So we just find that we need more mobile devices when we're in the office so that we can have access to cameras or we can take them to different rooms to have meetings and things like that. So I originally had them in the budget, but then we determined that we had a bunch of CARES Act funds, and those funds would be eligible for us to use for purchasing those kind of devices because we're really truly purchasing them because of COVID and the need to work remotely. So I took those out of the budget, and we're going to go ahead and purchase those this year and use CARES Act money for that. So for 2021, then, really, I'm just asking that we replace the computers per our usual computer replacement schedule. And you can see we have about just a little over $12,000 worth of computer equipment to replace for next year to keep us on schedule. You know, if we need to cut this budget a little bit, there's probably one or two that we can put off. But the thing is, you know, when we replace when we replace computers with brand new computers, we're often then redeploying the computers that we replace to replace even older computers. So I like to stay on the schedule because the further behind we get, the harder it is to catch back up. And I think we've been able to get to a good place in the last 4 or 5 years with that. So then the other two things that we are looking to replace for next year are 2 of our servers. We currently have 6 servers. So the 2 that we're looking to replace for next year are our file and print server and our SQL server. The SQL server in particular it houses all of our accounting files and software, so that's particularly important. Those 2 servers were new in 2015, so they're going to be going on 6 years old in 2021. So time to look at replacing those. I think that we may be able to use CARES Act money for those as well. We're still looking into whether we would be eligible to replace those with CARES money. So for now, I'm requesting that we just keep that in the budget. And if we find out that we can use CARES Act funds for those, then we can just borrow less when it comes time to actually do the borrowing. That's all I have unless you have questions for me.
Does anyone have any questions? Alder.
I'm wondering if we've considered using CARES Act funds to buy more laptops. Essentially, we would use them to replace some of the standard computers that we may need to purchase on our normal schedule. And then instead of buying a normal computer, you get a laptop and a docking station. And then that would allow us to be a little more nimble with staff. When you come into work, you can hook your laptop into your docking station and use your large screens, but then you're not necessarily using a tower computer. Laptops can be a little bit more expensive, but I'm wondering if we could shift some of those funds to CARES Act because they're laptops that would be more portable.
Yeah, we can look at that, Jennifer. I think it depends on, whose stations we're talking about. But yeah, we can certainly look at doing that for sure.
Anyone else? Okay, well, thank you, Leah.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good night.
You too.
You too.
Looks like Ryan is not here. We're a little ahead of schedule.
Oh, Ryan is right here.
Pardon?
Ryan is in, he's coming in right now.
Perfect timing. Ryan, you're up.
Oh, hello,
And
everyone.
We're a little ahead of ourselves. And this is page 84.
All right. Hello, everyone. Hope you're all doing well. And for 2021, proposing for $24,750. This is to replace the retaining wall outside of the library on Nichols Road. I can't say how old the current wall is, but our friends at the library do a lot of our landscaping, and it was brought to my attention about 1 to 2 years ago that there's quite a bit of erosion. And so at the top, there's 2 tiers. At the top, you can see that the ground there's holes. The ground's eroded. The rocks are a little unstable. And then on both walls, if you'll notice, it's actually bulging out. So the rocks are starting to shift out. Over time, those are just going to basically fall down. And on top of that, it's definitely, that's the priority reason to do it. And then otherwise, it looks, what's a good way to put, rustic. So to make it look a little bit more modern, we're thinking of replacing the stones that are there, which are pretty thin. I think that'd be the right word to say it. Which in talking with Brad and some of the people that come out to bid on it did say that those size rocks tend not to be as supportive as larger rocks. So we're looking at doing larger stones of the same type that the one wall where the new parking lot was done. So it'll match that aesthetically. It'll look a lot better. And then in doing the larger, and let me clarify, not the size that those are rather large, but I would say in between those sizes, it'd be done that way. I did talk with the contractors and said, really, I don't personally care if it's 2-tier or just one wall. Currently it's 2-tier. But everyone did say that 2-tier is going to be better from a structural perspective. So it'll be 2-tier. There'll be some availability for some landscaping to be done from the Friends to supplement what they would do, which is we can work with the contractor, but possibly put in some type of tree. But no matter what they put in, emphasis would be that it would be native to the area. We wouldn't put anything, special in that would need special care or potentially be invasive of any kind. So, getting the quotes ranged kind of wildly, I think, based on what they thought they would be doing. A lot of the lower quotes was basically like fixing the current wall, which is not really what we want, nor what is the recommendation. Talking again with Brad Brune, some of the others, like we want to replace it with larger stones. And what I would say is the best bid that I found was at about $24,750. I apologize, looking over this, I think there's some inconsistencies with the amounts. That's because one of the drafts I had another bid and then I got a better bid, which is the updated. So that $24,750 is the amount that I'd be asking for this project. Do you have any questions at all?
Anyone?
Yeah.
Doug?
Alderwood?
Yeah. Questions about 2 items that were in their budget and the mayor removed them. And the library story walk, could you just talk a little bit about that? And is that project actually going to go forward?
Sure. The story walk, so actually prior to my accepting the position, I believe Jake Anderson, the Parks and Rec director, had an idea of putting in permanent signage at the time would have been a brand new park. I believe it was the Bridge Road Park.
Okay.
And when I came on board, some of those plans were shared with me. And I thought at the time it was an excellent idea. We never really followed through on it. Some time has passed. But then with COVID and the library being shut down, we've utilized our story walk where, traditionally we usually put out twice a year. We've been rotating it quite frequently and talking with some patrons, and I'm kind of lucky enough I get to view with my office. Families enjoy it really consistently. I love seeing like the adults with the little ones kind of like going through and following the story, and frankly the adults too. I mean, why can't they enjoy some picture books as well at times? So they're just going through each sign and doing the story walk, and it really is just a great opportunity to enjoy a story either alone or with family and doing that. And so I asked Jake if he would be willing to partner to put one in one of the parks, and we haven't established which park yet. But he said absolutely he's on board. I also talked with him, would he be willing, if the library prepared all the stories and purchased the signs, would he be willing to, with his staff, to help switch those out? Because once we laminate all the stories, it'd be pretty easy. All they need to do is open up those, take it out, put them in. That's all there is to it. And he said, yeah, absolutely, he'd be willing. So the project would be in partnership with Parks and Rec, putting a permanent, semi-permanent story walk in one of the parks. The idea for what I had proposed in the capital budget to do this was like a pilot project type phase. So we do it in one park. At some point, kind of try to survey the community if they enjoyed it, if they'd like to see it in other parks, since we do have so many wonderful parks, and we could kind of branch out. It was suggested that, maybe this would be a good opportunity for the Friends to do this project, and then also get the Friends of the Monona Library name out there. Proposed it to the Friends. They discussed it and voted and approved that the Friends would then fund the pilot project for this. And so we're going to move forward with it. But again, this will be the pilot project. If it is successful, frankly, I think it will be, but if it is, and we want to do it on a larger scope, I will probably come back and say, we'd like to do this, in a few parks. It'd be a higher dollar amount prior to the point where the Friends maybe couldn't support it. And just see if that's an opportunity in future years. Otherwise, maybe it could be something with the Friends that they do just, every other year, do a new one or something like that. But the project is moving forward with the Friends funding, and we'll advertise as such that this is a Friends project that is going in.
Yeah, I thought it was a very logical thing for the Friends to fund. It's the kind of stuff they like to fund, and they were all really enthusiastic about it. So
Yeah, I can, excuse me, from where I live, I can tell you that the current story walk is really popular. And one thing I would suggest though is that when they're installed, to not make them very high, because that's kind of one of the neat things about now where they're down low. It's like the little kids, the really little kids, it's like right at almost their eye level. So,
Sure.
but seriously, that's something to keep in mind. But yeah,
Great.
and I believe they were putting one in out at the Lucier.
Yes, in partnership with the Lucier Foundation. They actually reached out to Karen Went, and in partnership, we are putting a story walk out there. And we're really excited. And frankly, it got a lot more buzz than we anticipated. But I think that just shows how kind of exciting and even a simple project like this can be for the community. They really like the idea of that. We've also been in conversation. Granted, when everything kind of hit, it's kind of fallen off the radar, and we hope to renew it when both organizations are back on their feet fully. But with the Alda Leopold Center, about doing some kind of story walk out there as well.
Right.
And when we discuss it with them, they seem very positive and receptive and excited as well. So hopefully that'll be established in future years.
All right. Thanks.
Yep.
Did
Any
you
other
wanna address
questions?
The counters, did you want to hear about that?
Sure.
So I proposed for new people counters. That's so when I, in the past submitted the visits for the library, and the visits was something that I was, really enjoyed seeing because it kept going up and up and up, and that we were getting a lot of traffic in the building. But what we have is, I would say, can't say for certain, more than 10 years old, I would say, is we just use like beam technology. So there's a beam set up at two of the entrances. When someone walks through, it breaks the beam, that registers as a count and so forth. It works, but the biggest thing is if a group of people walk in at the same time, which often happens with like kids, especially when the after school theater groups come, they walk in kind of all at once. The beam's going to register something, but it's not going to probably register every single one that comes in, because when it breaks, but three people are walking at the same time, it's going to count that as one. The counters that I found uses a newer technology. It's actually mounted above the door and it scans down, and it anonymizes the data, which is important, I found, with some of these people counters. And it also is it's web-based, so I can utilize that and check in at any time. What we currently do is we look down at the counter, we read it, the staff uses like a pen or a pencil to zero it out and then start over again. So it's just newer technology. I did note in the project that what the capital funds would do would be to purchase for the install, the equipment, and I believe the first year of using the software or the web-based product, and then the library would try to budget then after that for paying the annual fee. I think it was like $125 per counter, and we would still just do the two. I know there's a third entrance in the building, which is that old delivery door that enters close to the Friends bookstore. Frankly, we don't consider that like a main entrance and exit. It can be used, but I don't see traffic enough to warrant putting a door counter there. It'd be very expensive to register like maybe a handful of people every day at most.
So did Mark talk to you about how I suggested you pay for it?
Yes. So the suggestion being, instead of using capital funds, to use the fund balance funds that the library has, in our continuing effort to spend those down.
Because those are what, $120,000 or something like that, Mark said?
Our fund balance?
Yeah, is that right?
Yeah,
That's
it's around $120,000, which per policy leaves approximately, I think, 30-some thousand that we should be spending down, since it's supposed to be 10% of our operating budget is supposed to be in there. And this has been something that we've been working on. Come to find, though, we've somehow managed to, I don't know, we keep meeting it, so we're not spending it down, but I talked about it with the board. It's still like a priority to spend it down. So that project would be an opportunity to take a chunk out.
So that's why I removed that, Doug.
Yeah. Okay, thanks, Ryan.
Any other questions for Ryan? Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you all. I hope you have a
All
good
right.
evening.
You too. Next up is Brad talking about the buildings, and that is page 24.
Hey, Brad, since we haven't seen you in a long time, do we like get a CC peek or anything like that? Oh,
Here she
there
comes.
we go. There we go.
I want to see Cece.
Naked, just had a blowout.
You just got changed.
Toast.
Say hi. And she's crawling now.
Oh,
So
boy.
it's awesome. Yeah.
All over now, Brad.
Yeah.
They're moving. They
Thanks.
never stop.
Thanks, we needed that.
All right. Where do we start? Brian, I assume that you're going to talk about the building improvements, 40,000 for maintenance, general maintenance, typical maintenance items big items that we need to fix on a yearly basis.
Yeah, we'll talk about that at the next meeting next Tuesday.
Okay. The other items on here are to continue. So rank 2 would be the 4th phase of the HVAC upgrades to City Hall and the library. This one in particular is directly related to the library. This would be for engineering, to design, and I do not believe this includes bidding costs, so we'll have to take that into consideration for 2022. But this is to design the lower level HVAC upgrades. That includes the demolition of the existing air handling units in the lower level and construction piecemeal of those units, the new units. Those include a variable air volume system. And just to highlight on that, that allows us to more flexibly control the amount of airflow and temperature and comfort in each individual space. Right now, the system installed is what they call a constant volume system. Essentially, if it calls for heat, it's full on 100% blowing in air into each space to try and reheat those spaces. A variable air volume system will moderate the amount of airflow and heat or cooling that's needed for any given space based on the amount of deviation from the set point in those spaces. So it is more efficient. It develops a much more comfortable zone, and in my opinion would make a lot of sense to install. It's it's definitely a more modern system. So that's the added amount.
Does it mean we'll be warmer at council meetings?
Yes. Yeah, right now the reheat coils probably just can't catch up. And if the system is constant volume, it means regardless of how much heat is coming through, the fan is blowing at 100%. So if the heat is not at 100% or it's not pumped up, you're going to actually blow in air into a space and it's going to make it feel cooler, just because air is moving. So that's an issue. So we want to get that fixed. The one thing I want to make sure we note with this project is, and I think we discussed this with Mary and Brian and Mark when we had our first meeting, is the city council, if they do the design in 2021 and approve the $75,000, I hope that means that they're committed to 2022 to spend the capital funds to actually do the project. I would much rather design build in 2 given years back to back than to do this design and have it sit on the shelf and then have to potentially spend more money in engineering to update it. If it sits on the shelf for a year or 2 years, what have you. The other thing I want to warn the council of is that building construction projects get more expensive the longer they wait to do them, not less. So that being said, we would probably want to add 5 to 7% onto the total estimated cost for the project construction every year that it gets pushed. So that's just something to consider with this. So
And right now,
No,
it is,
Brad,
it is in the 2022 budget, isn't it?
it is, yeah, technically in the 5-year budget for HVAC, it would be in 2023
Yeah.
construction. Yep.
Any
Mark, you're
question?
muted.
I'm sorry.
The 593,000 would be 2022 is in the budget for.
Yeah, sorry, 2022. Yep.
Question, Nancy? You're on mute.
Yep, I was just grabbing for the space bar.
Okay.
Can you, Brad, you know, we've obviously, this is a long-term thing with HVAC and with lighting stuff as well. And I'm just wondering, with the HVAC stuff in particular, since we're on that piece, if we have any sense of the investments we've made already. I mean, I know it's, you know, we can't go without an HVAC system, so I'm not suggesting that you know, we should have done anything else, but I'm just wondering if, since we are buying newer, more efficient units, if we're seeing any kind of savings, or if you can get any kind of a sense of that yet, of what we've done so far, since this is a 4 or 5 year investment.
So the only significant unit that we've installed at this point was last year with the AC unit at City Hall. You do save money on units like that compared to what was installed there, because it's a staged unit. So basically the unit is built and designed in a way that it allows you to turn on stages of cooling depending on how much cooling you need. And so you don't have to turn the unit 100% on and then turn the unit 100% off. It also runs more efficiently than the units that were there prior to. But I stated this in 2018, actually, when we started into the phased approach to these projects, is that HVAC projects are not the money savers like LED lighting projects. They are meant strictly for comfort and for efficiency of heating and cooling spaces. If you want to save money, one of the items that was in the cap budget that I believe we moved to 2022 is a building envelope study. And that looks at things like the amount of insulation in walls, air leak testing, how well your lower level or basement floors are sealed for moisture resistance, how much moisture is in your insulation, different things like that. And those kinds of projects where you're actually changing the building envelope, enhancing it or making it better, will save way more in terms of efficiency and saving money than any kind of HVAC project would. These projects are being done so that we don't get into the middle of a budget cycle and all of a sudden we need a $50,000 unit installed because it failed. And they're all at the end of their useful life. And that's kind of the point of doing this. Engineers have told us, our actual maintenance company, Kilgist, has told us that these get to the point of being about 20 years old and they start significantly falling apart to the point where you may as well just put new units on. And so that's kind of the goal here, is to get these items fixed now in a phased approach so that we don't have to do it in the future in an emergency.
And some of these are much older than 20 years too, aren't they?
That's true.
Some pieces
Yeah.
of this. I mean, I was on the library board beginning in the mid 90s, and we've been spending a fortune fixing the library HVAC system ever since. That's like 25 years. It's been unbelievable. Every year you always budget for a certain amount and we'd always spend way over the budget. And so my goal with starting this when I became mayor was let's just fix it. It's not going to be cheap, but on the other hand, we're spending thousands and thousands of dollars every year and it's not working. It's not functioning nearly as well as it could for us. So in terms of
Nancy,
I just
sorry.
want to say one more thing about in terms of the city hall air conditioning. Didn't we discover like a year or two ago that had been running all winter and no one knew it? So I would think we're
Yeah.
going to save something there since we're not
Yeah.
air conditioning in the winter.
Yeah, that is true. The air conditioning unit was running in the middle of the winter. Somebody had put a jumper on the controls panel and allowed it to run full on without being able to shut it off. Yeah.
Yeah, so
But
just as a point of clarification, I'm certainly aware that we wouldn't be, wouldn't be like LEDs or something like that. I just assumed that I just remember also hearing horror stories, for instance, in the library of the fact that, ducks were blowing into nowhere, because they weren't
Right.
hooked up into anything. And so I thought, if we were seeing any kind of, even if it was minimal efficiency savings, it would be, without doing, a crazy amount of calculating, it would be nice to know, besides comfort. But thank you, Brett.
Yep, and we will. I mean, inevitably, these units are more efficient than what we have, and we are fixing those issues of air ducts blowing into the ceiling, for instance, above the ceiling tiles. That's obviously you can't have that. And through this process for designing this project, actually, and then looking towards the future for the next project at the library, we actually found a duct over the top of the municipal room that's open and blowing in to the ceiling. So yeah.
That's why
So
we're
I
so
mean,
cold, right?
yeah. So we will see efficiency. It's very, very difficult to calculate these things for HVAC. And even our engineer said, take it with a grain of salt when you have people come in to do value engineering for HVAC upgrades, because they're going to give you numbers that are going to blow your socks off. And in reality, that you can't back them up. They're not true. There's no really good way of measuring the cost savings for HVAC. It's just not, I wish there was, but it's not really possible.
Anyone else?
Yeah,
Mark?
just so you know, look at that dollar amount. It's 75,000. You'll see the general borrowing is 25,000. There's other at 50,000. So what the 50,000 is in 2020, the current year, there's a current project that is going on that came in way under budget. So it's the savings from that project. We're just kind of carrying over and keeping it as an HVAC project. So that's where if you're wondering where the 50,000 is coming from, it's coming from the 2020 project, which I don't believe has started yet, but we might actually have a little bit of savings later on, but we don't know until that project is finished. So.
Thank you, Mark. Yep, that's true.
Alder.
Brett, the building envelope study, was that for all of our main buildings, so community center, city hall, library, or
And the public works garage.
in the
actually.
garage?
Yep.
Could you give me an estimate on what just the library would be?
I would take the number and split it into 4, really. A city hall is going to be a little bit more. So city hall, I would estimate somewhere more like $15,000. The community center is going to be super straightforward because it's a very, very simple building. And it's in desperate need of help. So I can only imagine what they're going to come out with in terms of a report for that. But the library is probably somewhere between 10 and 12, I would assume.
10 and 12, okay. And then essentially it's just building efficiency is what the optimal goal is for the building envelope study.
They look at the shell of the building. So they don't look at the electrical systems and plumbing and HVAC. They look at the actual shell. So they're going to tell you, they're going to do infrared and nuclear studies. And it gives you a report of, like, for instance, how much moisture is in your ceiling or your roof insulation. And if it's high moisture content, that means, you got a very bad seal on your roof.
Right.
They're going to look at the actual condition of the roof itself too. And the goal of that project is to get a very detailed and good sense of the condition of not only insulation, but the actual structure of the roof, walls, and foundation. And that will help us plan for future projects. For instance, if the council was to ever decide to replace the current solar arrays on each one of these facilities. Well, if to do that, you're going to have to get the roof inspected either way. And so this not only would do that ahead of time so that we could plan for added cost potential for something like that kind of a project, but it would also tell us, hey, if we're going to do this, we might as well take the whole roof off, replace all the insulation, and improve the entire shell of the building.
So it's fair to say that this would help kind of plan for deferred maintenance issues.
Yeah, big time.
Okay.
These are the things that you absolutely cannot see, and these are the special types of companies that are able to do these studies.
Great.
For instance, I asked Strand, and they're an engineering firm, and they do stuff like this, and they're like, we don't do this kind of study. There are very specialized firms out there that do these things, and that's the kind of thing that we would look for.
Great. Thanks, Brad.
Anyone else have any questions about the HVAC? Okay, Brad, you want to move on to the next? Well, I guess you've got 3 things on this sheet, right? Or on the next sheet.
Yep. So we adjusted this, and they're listed in order by rank. So that's what the rank 3, 4, and 5 is on the right-hand side of the request form. I've known about these. Our maintenance people have known about these since I started actually at the city in 2016 full time. We have very outdated electrical control panels in our city facilities, to the point of them being sort of to code, pseudo to code, if you want to, what have you. I don't know how else to say it. We've had our electrical inspector in, and he looked at them. He said that, you know, the way they are, if you were to ever touch these, if you ever to do anything major like add fuses or breakers or anything like that, you would be required by code to completely reinstall this panel because it is not currently to code. So that's kind of the goal of I believe it's 10,000 in the request, is to replace a couple of these panels. There's one for sure at City Hall. There's one at the community center and one at the library that all need to be replaced. The one at the library, if you can envision it, is right outside of the municipal room door, closest to the exit, closest to the side door on Nichols. There's actually an electrical control panel on that wall that's completely and totally accessible by whoever comes into the library. It has no lock. And that happens to be where a lot of teens hang out down there. And I'm not saying that teens are bad people, but they decide to do curious things sometimes. And so just as a kind of a liability prevention, it would be smart to upgrade that panel with a lockable door on it. And just overall, it is an older panel. It's original to the building because it's in the original part of the library. And it could use an update for sure. So that would be the goal of that one. And then the other ones are just, for instance, at the community center right now, there's a conduit that's an old disconnected conduit that comes into the back of the electrical panel that is uncapped and leaks water into the electrical panel. And I can only, that's not a good thing. You can't have water and electric in the same sentence. So that needs to get replaced and fixed. So this would help do that. And then at City Hall, there's one panel that in particular that is not currently installed to code. And the front cover of it keeps falling off every time we go to open it up, which is also not safe. So for staff or whoever is working on it. So that would be the $10,000. I don't know, Mary, do you want to just go one by one with this and ask if anybody has questions on each?
Sure, I suppose. Does anybody have any questions about the panels?
I got a quick question.
Mark?
You're talking about the community center. We didn't put that in the budget. That's not one of your requests. So is that what you're talking about?
Included in the 10,000.
Because we had it broken out, City Hall 4,000 and library 5,000, total of 9, and I rounded up for 10 for the
Oh, yeah.
contingency. So I don't see, I just want to make sure we're on the same page.
Yeah, that's a number 7, Brad. We've got total project cost 2021.
Yeah, I don't, we wouldn't have to replace the panel at the community center. We just have to cap that bad conduit. So they basically have to dig down outside of the building and properly cap it so that it's no longer exposed and open.
Would
No,
10,000
water
cover
component.
all of that?
Yeah, I think so. Yep. Also, there's going to be cost savings in the next couple items here, Mary, that I'm going to shed some light on as well.
Any questions for Brad? Okay, I guess you want to move on to the next.
Yeah. So the LED out parking lot and pole light replacements at the library, this has probably been long overdue. Just as an FYI, I don't know if anybody's ever noticed, but if you pull into the library at night, only half of the lights are lit in the parking lot. And that's not because they don't work. It's because they're turned off because the neighbor complained about light pollution onto their property, into their living room. And it makes sense because those lights are not designed in a way to accurately and efficiently shed light only on the parking lot. They're more like a flood. And therefore, the rounded globe glass lens that is on it kind of pushes light out at an angle to the sides of the light, not straight down onto the parking lot like it's supposed to. So the goal would be to replace those with something that is designed for parking lots, not designed to be aesthetically pleasing, because there are more architectural light poles that are out there right now. So we would put something in, it's essentially the exact same lights that are up at City Hall, and they shine efficiently and effectively straight down onto the parking lot. I asked for what they call a foot candle display. It's a light display of how many foot candles would be on the ground based on the design of the light. And there's less than 0.1 foot candles at the edge of the property line, which is just more than what moonlight would be. So there's basically zero light pollution that would shine onto the neighboring properties. And it would very effectively light just the parking area. So that's that we would do that. And then while we were doing that, we would replace the very old, there's a tall pole light that's really fairly hidden behind all the landscaping along the sidewalk, along the side of the building that goes from the bottom door at the lower level to the sidewalk on Nichols. I don't know if you've ever even noticed it, but there is a light there, but you can't see it because it's behind the trees. So the goal would be to put a new light there with an arm that actually shines down on that sidewalk, which is somewhat steep and could be a slip hazard in the winter. And then there's a very, very old green pole light at the very top entrance off of Schluter that works half the time, is what I'm told. I think that it has a very loose and rusted corroded fixture in there, or socket. And we would replace that with the exact same light that are in front of City Hall and in front of the community center. So the lighting on Civic Campus essentially would all match. It would all be up to date and modern LED. There would be significant cost savings on that. I think that the lights that are in the parking lot now at the library are 150 watt. What we would be installing would be 44 or 45 watt bulbs. So that's the lighting upgrades. We'd also replace the lights on the library sign that doesn't work and hasn't worked for a long time. And we would replace the light on the flagpole at the library as well.
Any questions about the library lighting? I'm sorry, Brad, did you have something else?
Nope, nope.
Questions, anyone? Guess you can move on to the EV charging stations.
All right, so this is where we would have some significant savings. I was talking with our police chief and a lieutenant, Sarah and Wally. And the current vehicles that they're purchasing, although they're hybrid, are not plug-in hybrid. There is no way to let them sit and have them plugged in so that they don't switch over to the combustion engine at any point in time while they're sitting and idling, to allow, you know, their computers to stay on and all the electronics in there to stay on and whatnot. So according to Wally, they do not make a pursuit rated, which is the key there, plug-in hybrid patrol car. They do make plug-in hybrid patrol vehicles, but they are not pursuit rated and they are not SUVs. So that's the key difference there. So it's something to keep in mind. But basically, there would be no need to install electric charging stations at City Hall until we have vehicles like that. And if we are not planning to purchase vehicles like that, and for instance, the public safety building at some point maybe is built, you know, it may not be worth spending money to install these at City Hall for police use. Maybe we should instead look to install EV charging stations at City Hall for public use in the future. And those would be a revenue source for the city, because we can they essentially come with an app, and you go onto the app and you pay for a certain amount of time, and the charger turns off after that time period is up.
So are you changing your requests now?
Yeah, I would
saying-
recommend that we do not spend or take, or I would recommend we take this out of the budget at this point.
We have 2 public charging stations in front of the community center, correct?
Yes, but you pay MG&E.
MG&E.
Yep, exactly. And they're not the fast chargers.
Do you know how much they're used?
They're used. Yeah, I would say they're used actually fairly often when we are, you know, obviously pre-COVID. People do park there and have their vehicles plugged in. I've seen it on a weekly basis for the most part. So,
Well, I guess this changes something. This is the first I've heard, so.
yeah, I apologize. I was under the assumption that we bought plug-in hybrid vehicles. That's what I feel like I've heard that in the past, and I've come to realize that I guess we do not have those.
Okay.
Sarah has one.
Yeah, but hers charges very efficiently because it's a much smaller battery pack. So it basically charges in 2 hours on a typical, you know, cord, a 220 volt, so, or 210 or whatever it is.
Any questions for Brad about the EV charging stations? Sounds like we could potentially remove them from the budget, or if you want to put them in for the public, it seems to me like we need to do a little more consideration of that. Doug?
It looked like originally there was going to be one at the library. Is that, and that was taken out?
That was moved, and I had moved it to 2022, but then Brad wanted it moved to 2023. So I'm right. I think that's what I heard.
Yeah, we had talked about doing multiple in the same year. So we would do the library, we'd do like Ahuska Park, Winnequa Park, Schuyler Park potentially. So,
Oh, I guess I wasn't aware we were talking about other parks. According to this, we'd be talking about the Public Works Garage.
and Public Works Garage, yeah.
And the library. I think I thought those were the only 2 we were talking about, but I mean, certainly parks could be something in the future.
So the one at the library would be for public or for employees, or how would that?
For public.
For public.
For public use, yep. That would be one of those that comes with an actual digital readout station, and then it has a Wi-Fi connection to the building. It's connected to our server network, and you connect to it with an app on your phone, and then it charges you. Basically, you say, "Oh, I want 3 hours of charging," and you pay for that charging, and it shuts off after 3 hours. So it doesn't encourage people to sit there for 12 hours overnight and try and charge the car for free.
Right. So would it make sense to leave the 7,000 in the budget and do the one at the library?
That one is going to be significantly more expensive because we have to run electric to that location and put in a new breaker panel. So it's more involved than the one at City Hall. The one at City Hall has electric that's readily available right there.
I think the one at the library would be 12,500.
Yep.
Oh, I see. Okay. I thought that was the total. All right. Thanks.
Nancy?
I was just going to say that, I, as everyone here knows, I've been a champion of sustainability since I got on the council. I know a lot of us are, but until we see a demand on the two that are right there across from the library, I would advocate for adding a lot more. And not to say that they don't get used, but I mean, I just know a lot of people have put some in their houses, so that there just aren't that many. If you buy an electric car, people have added it to their house more than anything. And like I said, unless we feel like there's a line at the ones that are at the community center, I'd rather frankly put something somewhere else in town or not at all.
Okay. Anyone else? I actually met someone at a MESBA event today who works for a company that does that. Among other things, they're an electrical contractor, and she said they've got tons of business installing them in people's homes. Okay. Anything else, Brad?
Nope, that would be it.
Did anyone else have any other questions for Brad? No? Okay, thank you. Or Nancy, or Kathy, did you have something?
Yeah, so where did we leave this? I mean, it makes more sense to me to put it at the library or someplace, because you could go in and read books, or at a park. If you go to City Hall, what do you do while your car is charging?
Well, I think he's saying take it out of, I think you're saying don't do it at all this year, right?
Yeah, I would recommend that we don't spend the money on it if our police cruisers can't actually use it. And that was the goal, was to install it for city vehicle charging. And we are currently we don't purchase a plug-in hybrid vehicle. So it really wouldn't serve the purpose that it was meant to do.
Okay, that's fine. I just wondered how we left it after all the discussion.
Well, I think we'll probably need an amendment to remove, 7,000 for that? Is that right?
Correct.
Any other questions for Brad? All right, thank you, Brad.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you, you too. Next up is Jake, right on time. Let's see, and this will start, he's got 3 different parts of the budget. First Parks is on page 75.
Good evening. Wow, you guys are being really efficient tonight, being ahead of schedule. That's like a first. I'll hope to keep that trend going, but thank you, Mayor and elected officials. This process has resulted in a lot of amazing projects in the city of Monona and our park system, and I think no year more than this year was evident in essential function that we serve in the community and the projects that contribute to an overall healthy community. So this year for 2021, we've got several projects and kind of some maintenance items. The biggest one think everyone's familiar with Stonebridge Park and this project that's kind of a combination stormwater management, phosphorus reduction, and park improvement project. So this conceptual plan that was finalized at our last Parks Board meeting was a result of some really excellent public input virtually over the last month. A lot of public comment, suggestions, landmarks, input, and Parks Board committee. So we have $335,000 on the park side of it. That does not include the stormwater portion of it. We're still in final design at this point, getting final estimates where it should be revised before the first read of the actual capital budget. But talking with the engineer today, this is a fairly conservative amount. The conceptual plan on the park side of the project is fairly minimal, with some pedestrian paths down to the water, an abutment for the sailing pier or a future city pier, shoreline improvements, and work around the pagoda. The big challenge for this project was we've got some really mature oak trees in the park, and I think that wanting to preserve and save those with the design of the project and still meet the stormwater management goals that we're looking for. So Director Stefani tomorrow night will probably go into a little bit more detail on the stormwater side of it, but basically it's a big concrete vault that will be dug down into the park, upsize the inlet at the curb to handle all the stormwater and water coming off of the street, be able to settle down and trap the sediment in a large chamber, then outflow underground to the lake from there. That'll give us the ability to provide an ADA accessible path, kind of looping down through, keep some of the current topography with some of the hills on the south side of the property, and preserving the pagoda with some retaining wall or some type of landscaping feature around it. So overall, this was rated as the priority, highest priority project from the Parks and Recreation Board.
Do you want to address the bubbler removal, Jake?
Yes. So thank you, Mayor. Mayor asked me about the bubbler. I think we talked about a little bit at committee. My recommendation is that we do not put a bubbler at this location. Several reasons. One, it does add some cost on the operating end. So we are charged for usage and then for meters. So the meter charge and water usage, and then the time to have our water utility department install it and take it out each year. So there is a staff cost and an operating budget cost to that. Given the proximity to Schluter Park as well, that has a bubbler and restrooms, I'm comfortable in not having one on this. It's about a $15,000 line item by the time you look at all the things that are involved. So it's not just the bubbler, it's cutting into the road and tying into the water line there. So I'm comfortable with that, but if it's a will of the council to have it back in, it just, I have to look at how we do from an operating and maintenance end as well. So there is a cost implication on the operating side for the bubbler.
Any questions about the Stonebridge project? Alder.
Where did we settle in on the bathroom with Stonebridge? Were we not doing no? Okay. Awesome.
No porta potty. Yep.
Anyone else? Okay, Jake, you want to move on to?
Sure. And then the next item on the list is sign replacement. So we're churning away slowly at replacing all of our old signs, and some of our newer style need to be refurbished. So 3 different signs, one at Birchhaven. Ahuska would be the resurfacing or refurbishing of both the entry sign from Broadway and the sign that faces the Beltline. Both are kind of in tough shape there. And then Tecumseh, which is the park past Oneida, where there's a lift station. We never did put that sign back in when we.
This doesn't say Tecumseh.
Oh, It should in your packet on page 75. Maybe it doesn't say it on the individual detail, but
So does the 13,000 cover Tecumseh as well?
that's correct.
Okay.
Okay, next project.
Any questions about signs? I did go out and look at the Huska ones in particular, and given how visible they are, they look pretty beat. I know in the past I've been pretty big on pushing off sign replacement, but I think those definitely should be replaced. So anyway. I go on to the tree replacement.
Yep, same dollar amount that we had in this year. This is for removal, replacement, and associated costs of like mulch around new trees. So this year we spent about half of that capital amount on contracted tree removals, so larger than what our staff could handle. And then we also, in addition to that, did a fair amount of removals on our own with our park staff and with assistance from Public Works. I'm estimating we're close to 40 trees removed around the system, and being this was a pretty good year on plantings. We got 26 trees, I think was the last count in to the system. So that's a lot of time and effort from our staff to, once the tree's cut down, stump grind, fill that hole back in, and then replant and water and maintain. So that's probably about the max that we could do. We have a couple of very large trees slated for removal for next year in various parks. So I would anticipate kind of that same ratio for next year. Probably half of that capital amount is for removals, and the other half would be for new plantings and care.
Any questions? Alder Moore and then Alder Thomas.
Yeah, we had, obviously, as you know, Jake, we've both in the Public Works budget as well as in Park and Rec, we've been trying to at least stick to one-on-one so we don't lose trees. You know, everyone we take out, even knowing that we're replacing them with one that's much smaller. Are we on target with that? I know we, like last year, we did an amendment to the budget to make sure that we have enough money to buy trees. So can you tell us where you're at with that?
Yeah, I mean, we'll get there. There's some years where removals are going to be more than what we can plant, and then other years in which we'll plant more than we remove. So this was a really heavy year on removals due specifically to the condition of a lot of our ash trees. So it's not necessarily like we cut one down and we plant one right away. It's we got to take the ones that are in biggest. But yeah, I mean, over the last 5 years, we're still, you know, plus on the trees planted versus the trees removed.
Great, thanks. That's what I was looking for. I know it doesn't always line up going from year to year, obviously because of the season. So I get that. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. For example, like Stonebridge will have, there's 7 ash trees that are all in, you know, failure point of decline at this point for that part of the project. Maybe we don't get 7 back in at Stonebridge, but we'll get 7. You know, maybe it's 5 at Stonebridge and 3 at another location. But yeah, I mean, there's the bigger challenge for us is planting them is easy. It's when we get drought like we had this year and we're chasing around and watering them, keeping them watered up. So we have to be balanced in our approach so we don't plant trees and then they're dead in 2 years.
Could I just ask a question about the watering? Do you use that same equipment that Public Works uses to water trees?
We have a different, if they're close to a facility that we can use off of like a shelter of water source there, we'll do that. Or otherwise we have a trailer with a 1,000-gallon water tank and a pump, similar type of system, but we had fashioned it a couple years ago for flooding of the lagoon. Sorry, that potential spam. So must be one of those political calls. Yeah, so we have a separate system that we can use, whether ideally we're close to a water source or we can pump out of a lagoon, but now with that trailer system, we can pretty much get in where we need to.
Okay. Kathy, did you have a question?
Did I hear you say mulch, Jake? And you were talking about the trees? I'm assuming that we take the free mulch from the city. We don't buy it, do we?
We have bought it in the past. Just got the brown dye, but this year we used all the natural mulch that we had mulched up as part of our grant program.
So we
Can
get
be,
it.
yes, we do. We do. Yep.
Yeah, because they have, some of them have terrific mulch that they're giving away, so.
Anything else about the trees? Doug?
Yeah. So with the purchase of San Damiano in June of next year, I know there's going to need to be a lot of tree work there. And I don't know, obviously, well, I don't know if you have any idea what the number for that would be. Is this something we need to, we're going to expect to amend the budget or to pay for that?
I have some money in the budget for San Damiano next year for whatever we might need. And we have some we found for this year to get started on hiring a grant specialist and doing the appraisal. So I guess it's kind of hard to say what we're going to need right now. Brian, did you have something to say about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the tree removals and kind of maintenance over there is going to be a multi-year process. I mean, once we take ownership of the property in June, unless we get permission to do it ahead of time, at that point we would do an official tree inventory and see what's there and health of the trees there. And once we get a sense of what are good trees that we want to keep and what are the ones that are ones that need to go for a multitude of reasons, then we can kind of plan out those removals. I don't know that we need to necessarily budget to remove all those trees in one fiscal year. So I think once we get into the budget cycle for 2022 next summer, we'll have a better sense of how do we spread that out over a couple of years so it's more manageable from a cost perspective.
Okay. I mean, just as a layperson observation walking through there's some that I don't know that we're gonna, once we own it and the public can go in there, that we're gonna want to leave, but I don't know how much that'll be.
Yeah. Alder Thomas.
Can we, Mark or Brian, can we, when we borrow the money to buy it, can we add on a couple $100,000 to take down the trees and do some maintenance?
I mean, that's a Mark question. I don't know that I would recommend that. I mean, that's a pretty big borrow as it is. I'd want us to address that through our normal capital process rather than tacking on to that. That's going to be a 20-year payback, Mark?
Correct.
So you're paying for that tree removals over the course of 20 years rather than, our standard payback for our borrows.
Jake?
Review of the trees, at least from my level, the majority of those that are immediate safety issues, city staff is going to be able to take care of. Because it's in a fairly open area, not next to power lines, etc. A lot of these will be able to drop within the park parcel itself. And so I think but I would strongly recommend that we do have a tree inventory and a tree health report. So we kind of have documentation from a third party on which ones are the most critical need to remove. And I'm comfortable that between our park staff and public works assistants that we can take care of the most critical ones. And then generally that's a pretty good late fall, winter project if we have to do more, or we can identify at that point on anything that we would need to contract out.
Hopefully we could maybe get an intern to do that. Like the intern did the tree inventory a year or two ago for us from the forestry department, or be worth looking into anyway.
Yeah, and I'm already in conversations with UW-Madison. It's kind of, at least the engineering department has reached out, expressing some interest in getting involved in some projects over there once we have ownership of the property. So we would make use of their resources when we can.
Should be good. Anyone else? Okay, let's see, next up is, I guess, is it the equipment? Or the
Equipment,
toolkit?
yep. So these are a couple of attachments for our Bobcat Toolcat, which if you've probably seen it buzzing around town, it's quickly become our most versatile and widely used piece of equipment for parks maintenance. It takes all of the attachments that our regular Bobcat skid steer takes that the Public Works Department has, and so we have the ability to kind of share attachments for it. These particular attachments, one is for turf work, which is kind of being able to pulverize the soil and grade it out. So as we continue to do these tree removals and turf restoration and spot parks, having this piece of equipment is at our disposal instead of having to rent it out is extremely helpful and helps speeds up the process. So for example, this year we have some dirt. We have a lot of dirt in a lot of different places at this point from various projects. But we're waiting until we get kind of that big dirt pile of CF firemen spread at spots to be able to rent the equipment to kind of grade it out and reseed some different areas. So we filled in Birch Haven, the areas that were affected by the lagoon or by the flooding, what we affectionately call the back 40, which would be the west side of Winnequa Park, filled in some of those low areas and continue to do so. But we want to be able to kind of get at them all at one time. With the piece of equipment, we can kind of get the dirt raked out properly on a better schedule. And so we don't have to shuffle a bunch of things around. The other part of that is just a snow plow piece of equipment for the Toolcat. We do have a snow blower and we have access to a couple brooms. A V-plow just helps remove certain size snow events more efficiently with the equipment that we have.
Did you say that this was quite expensive to rent?
Yeah, I mean, I think the line item on that landscape rake is like $6,000, and it's upwards of like $125 a day that we rented. So when we do have to rent, that typically comes out of the operating budget. So again, it's the purchases and capital that help ease up our operating budgets from having to rent out equipment and just having access to it when we need it.
Questions, anyone? Nancy, and then Jennifer.
Yeah, just Jake, aside from that rake, the first piece that you were talking about in terms of the turf, you also referenced a rental. Did you say, is that about the same per day, or are we talking about the same piece of equipment?
Not understanding your question, Alder.
I think that's what I just asked him about, isn't it?
Okay, that's what I was asking. It sounded like you were talking about several different attachments.
There's two attachments in the capital budget proposal. The first attachment is the landscaping rake. The second attachment is for snow removal operations.
Right. And so I was just, and I think Mary just asked you about the rake, so we're fine.
Okay.
Jennifer, did you have a question?
Yeah, just bear with me. Did you say that Public Works has the rake that you guys swap back and forth, or?
No, they don't have
Okay.
one at all. So this would be
Okay.
shared between both departments.
Okay, that's what I was doing.
I would just be paying for it out of the parks budget, but.
Well, you're so kind, Jake.
Really,
As a
Jen.
remind all
I do my
departmental
best.
staff, as a remind all departmental staff, it's the city's money in general. It's not one department's money.
Thank you, Jake.
Any other questions? Okay, I guess the next thing is the benches and the trash cans and.
Yep, this is our kind of catch-all, and we had put a little bit more money in this year with the intent on doing some additional acts. City staff, that did not get done, and so I think some of that's being carried over, which was the reduction in the overall ask based on our balance where we're at now, but still looking to get our bike racks in at Winnequa. firemen's in Maywood parks for next year. And then the other ones are line items for replacements of existing cans. If you kind of saw the change in picnic table color this year in the summertime, we went to a more Monona bluish than the gray. And that's where some of the money for the wood and the paint come from, refurbishing and adding to our stock.
Questions? Nope. Next item is playground surfacing.
Yeah, this is a maintenance item. Every 3 to 5 years, our engineered wood fiber chips need to be added to maintain our guidelines for accessibility. And so this is at all the playgrounds that have engineered wood chips.
Questions? Next up is San Damiano planning. This is the money that I just kind of last minute thought we ought to put in something. I'm not sure what exactly the friends are going to end up raising and how we'll be spending that. So I wanted us to be able to have something in there to take care of immediate needs next year. So any questions about that? Nancy?
Yeah, I just, I'm assuming that this may come up in public safety. But if not, it occurs to me that it, just in terms of San Damiano, that it might make sense if it's possible to have a security camera on the house.
I mean, these aren't specifically, I guess I could say these are for some potential things, but there's certainly other things that it could be used for as well.
Okay.
I wasn't necessarily budgeting for these specific items. It's just.
Right. I get it, that it's a placeholder. Yeah. I just wanted to make sure in sort of the bucket list of things that we might want to hold a place for, that a security camera might be a good idea.
No, that's a good suggestion.
Sitting, you know, well, I mean, once we take ownership, maybe it won't be sitting quite as much, but the property is going to be obviously then accessible to the public and we're going to be owning it. So we probably ought to have some security on it.
Yeah. Yep. I agree.
I think in the police department budget for next week, Tuesday's discussion, Wally does have just general cameras for the city. So that would be the place we could add, you know, came up, we wanted to specify that.
Chrissy, did you have a question?
I did, but you cleared it up with that. Thank you.
Any other questions about the San Damiano? Doug?
And,
any questions about anything related to parks?
Yeah. Jake, one of the items that was in the Parks Board budget was the Schluter Waterman Way Park design, and that was taken out. Can you talk about that project and what you're hoping to accomplish and why we felt it was important?
Sure, Alderwood, thank you. So the project discussed by the Parks Board on our bike tour that we had this summer, and then meetings after that, was how Schluter Park has been engaging with our public and visitors since the redo in 2016. The challenges of the flood of 2018, which had kind of caused a lot of slumping of the lower level of the cove of material into the channel, and then being able to kind of marriage Stone or Waterman Way Park and Schluter Park. And so getting pedestrian access off of kind of going through the parking lot, having a better symbiotic relationship with how we can use Waterman Way, potential sidewalk along the road in Waterman Way, and a little bit of changes to get some large tree removals last year, which gave us the opportunity to kind of look at a performance stage for either a beer garden event or theater type of events in the park. And so this would be kind of conceptually to put all that in with public input and then look at a couple year project. But the native vegetated mat on the cove is not really came in the way we would have liked. We do have a lot of people fishing along that cove, and the DNR did change their kind of position on how we could armor the cove from when we originally did that project. So conceptually, this project would be going through and looking at those avenues of pedestrian access through the park, and as it relates to Waterman Way, especially, and then some of those cove updates.
And then if I'm correct, I think the amount for actual construction in the following year was 200,000.
Yeah, I think I estimated at that based on some grading work and sidewalk installation at Waterman Way, and kind of the accessory ped path in Schluter. So I don't think it would be that major of a project, with kind of the priority of eventually having that ped access from Dean Avenue, which would, Dean to McKenna to basically the center of the city over to Schluter Park. But hooking up at least that one aspect of Waterman Way. And then ideally the committee talked about having some more usable field space at Waterman Way for both recreational athletics and then special events, repurposing the existing gazebo into kind of a beverage station, depending on the event itself. And given the just vast volume of use that it's gotten this summer, and quite honestly, the last 3 summers since we've redone that project, I would say it may be our most popular park.
Yeah, well, you mentioned the bike tour that the Parks Board went on. I thought it was valuable to actually get out and see it and see the two areas, Waterman and Schluter, together and how they might interact. So.
Alder Thomas?
Well, if we weren't taking on San Damiano, I would say I think it's a time to look at that. But I think that we need to we need to limit our expenditure, and we need to find out what we're going to need to do at San Damiano and what kind of money we're going to get before we obligate to anything else.
I think that was part of my rationale for moving it back a ways, and also just how Jake's also going to be pretty involved next summer in San Damiano, just cleaning it up and making it, usable, at least initially usable. So I was kind of thinking of that in staff time too, but that was my rationale, and you were all certainly welcome to put in a budget amendment. Any other questions?
I would just jump in there quick, Mayor, on that. Given, I think the consensus of the Parks Board is, in a pretty good spot for some of the amenities that we're looking at and changes to those 2 projects, where I don't normally would recommend doing conceptual and engineering in 1 year, but I think in this case, we could probably do that in a future year. So generally, I would say you do your concept or master plan in year 1, your engineering and cost estimate in year 2, and construction in year 3.
So you think it'd do push 2 into 1 year and then?
Correct. After you get through the San Damiano stuff for next year.
Alder Groupie.
I just want to, I think everyone's raised really good points tonight. I think the concern here is just that this project will get pushed so far out that it won't be relevant anymore. And I just want to, voice that on Jake's behalf and make sure that it's something that we're keeping on the radar as we move forward. Obviously, San Damiano is a huge project and will consume a lot of our time and our money. But I think Jake's right that for now, Schluter is, perhaps our most used park, and making it accessible and just more functional, since we don't know how long we're going to be forced to gather outside. I just think it's important to just make sure that we don't let this fall by the wayside in the coming years.
Alder Thomas.
Hard for me to believe any of Jake's projects would fall by the wayside.
Yeah. Jake is pretty good at keeping them in the forefront.
Thank you, Kathy.
Okay, anything else about parks? I guess the next thing then is pool, which is page 87. Okay, is that right? No, I'm sorry, community center is 87. I guess we can go to community center next.
All right, so 3 projects in the community center. One being building security improvements. Depending on a little bit what happens in the operating budget and what we're looking at as far as public use of the building, we may not need to use that much in 2021. This year, we installed a sliding glass window to do kind of walk-up service into the office, so we don't have to have people in the building. And then we also got one of the security buzzers. So our level is secured while we have our childcare programs, and both doing the virtual learning lab and then the after-school program now from the outside. If we get back to a point where we're having general public in, we would like to be able to put the fob access like we have at City Hall to keep the doors locked where we have programs happening in the building. So that would be this next year's project. But I do know, I believe our finance director can confirm, but a couple of these projects we did this year, we used with our CARES funding, or at least submitting for CARES funding.
You did correct. Those projects were submitted for CARES.
And I think
So
we've had some incidents there, haven't we? With kind of strange people wandering around the community center, and we have all these kids there and.
Yes, yeah.
Sure.
Yes, so the challenge with having the programs that we've had with public access is just, drunken transient people have come in before, people very upset. So if we can handle them on the outside, or at least from an intercom system before having admitted to the building, it makes our programs and the senior center programs a little more safe and secure.
Any questions? Okay, Jake, you want to move on to the loading dock construction?
Sure. So this project is in design phase right now, and the intent is that this project will be bid with the Stonebridge park construction project. But it's basically taking the loading dock where our dumpsters are. There's some trip hazards as you're exiting the facility from the main hall and from the kitchen. So be raising the concrete level up, creating a sloped entrance. And if you just will bear with me for 2 seconds, I can show my screen if you'd like to see a little bit more closely. Actually, I don't. Sorry, I'm talking to myself, but I was trying to explain what this project is. But when we did the path around the building on the water slide side in 2017, I believe that was, we didn't have enough to redo the asphalt access up to our dumpsters. Since then, our trash removal has not been able to get up that hill in the wintertime. It's just a very pitted end of life on the asphalt. So this project is to kind of use concrete, reshape that and provide access into the building. And then we're looking at some improvements on the south side of the building with this project. That the concrete for the main entrance for the senior center is really pitted and has mobility issues on that side. So it'd be looking at replacing that part of it as well.
Any questions? Doug?
Yeah, Jake, this originally had a shade structure as part of it. Could you talk about that?
Yeah, so talks with Diane and the senior center, looked at would there be a possible way to provide some additional outdoor program space and some transition space with the installation of a shade structure over the kind of front part of it. It was taken out, by the mayor for that part of it. I think we can do something in-house similar to what we did with the seating area. May not necessarily be shade, but depending on time of day. We have a large honey locust in that corner, which does provide some shade in the afternoon, maybe not as much in the morning. The challenge we have at both the senior center programs and rec programs is that transition time between when one program ends and another program begins. And so outside of the winter months, we're really going to try to encourage people to use spaces outside, of the building. So we don't exceed our capacity with COVID restrictions, and B, I think just to try to move people in and out from program to program a little bit faster.
And I removed it. I don't have an objection to it necessarily, but there weren't any designs or any estimates other than the number Jake gave. I wasn't sure what that was based on. So that's why I removed it.
Yeah. Oh, just an observation. I know the other table and chairs that you have out up closer to Nichols Road, I rarely see anyone sitting there. I think part of the reason is there's no shade.
Yeah. I'm sorry, Jake, go on.
I was say if we get to that point after bidding and this council is interested in that, we can look at that based on what the funding level's at. Typical shade structures like the one at the pool that kind of cantilevers out. We did install those ourselves as city staff. So if it is something that's still a concern or an issue as we move into next summer and we can look at budget, it is something that, we're comfortable being able to install ourselves, not through a contract.
Any other questions? I think that's it for community centers. So next item is pool.
We didn't do the building space needs, 3,000.
I'm sorry, what page is that on?
Community center.
That's right. Community center space utilization. I'm sorry, page 90.
Thank you, Mayor. I thought you took your red pen to that one
No,
too
I
at the
didn't.
last minute. So building space utilization plan is basically a study of what we can do quickly, cheaply, most effectively for use of the space for the remaining time we're at the community center, which I now estimate to be till after I'm retired in 20 years. So I think it would be, I'm just a realist, Mayor. We've talked about short-term, medium-term, and long-term with the assumption that we would have another 10 years, joking, this serious now, 10 years in the building. From an office standpoint with existing and any future staff, how the change in use of the facility with a programming emphasis, would it make sense to redo in a way any of the rooms that would make it more appealing or be able to give more classroom space for programs for the senior center and the park and rec department. So this was kind of born out of COVID and how we can space our offices uniquely and not be so close. We had 2 people in one space and 2 people in another space, and can we cordon off, we're starting to get ideas of how can we make this building more effective use for us and then with our staff with distancing. But in reality, it's more of, is there a better way over the next couple of years of things that we should do to make our residents and our programs more effective in the space that we're in?
Any questions about that one? Kathy?
Are we talking senior center and your, okay.
Correct, entire building.
Yeah, because I know there was a problem with the senior exercise program last year. And there's probably more need than space in that building right now.
That's true. Any other questions? Alder Corr?
Do you have somebody in mind for this?
I do have a proposal, but I have a proposal that we use for budget, but we would most likely RFP it unless we have the dollar amount doesn't necessarily need to have a true request for proposals, but if you have suggestions or ideas, certainly pass them along.
I was looking for another project.
Oh, okay.
Anything else? Now we will move on to the pool on page 95.
All right, looks like just the one project for this year. New heater. Heater's 15 years old. The last time we typically have it serviced each year before we fire out for the season or after we get going for the season. Service tech that we've had out for 3 or 4 years in a row said you're probably at that point, where you'll get one or maybe 2 more seasons out of it. Given that we didn't run the pool this year, we don't know until and that would give us fairly newer mechanicals for the pool, which I would believe will give us extended life of how long we can run this pool. So this is kind of the last of between pumps and filters that we would be replacing.
Any questions? Alder Coor.
When would we have to make a commitment to do this project if we did fund it? If we find out next March that we're still in this boat.
I'll double check. I think it's like a 6-week lead time
Okay.
on when you sign the proposal and paperwork to get the heater in. So, I mean, I'm committed to providing a very compelling argument for next year on why we should be opening the outdoor pool and do it safely if we're still within COVID, given the success of some of our area colleagues around the county.
Fantastic.
Anyone else have any other questions? Doug, did you have something?
Yeah. On the, we had in the expansion of the pool concession area, which as you note is really small. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so this has probably been on the want list from Missy, now Miller, not Kazorski. She did get married, so congratulations if you haven't heard. Missy is now Missy Miller. It's gonna be a little hard for me to
Is
remember.
Miller M-I or
Miller, yes. So if you get an email from a Miller, / Melissa, it's not spam. Our concession area is really small, and trying to get people to stay in that area to eat and drink is a challenge. And with COVID spacing issues, expanding towards the tennis courts almost doubles the size of it, gives us the ability to still offer concessions, but keep them in that area, into a fenced-in area. In a normal year, I'd say this is, a good opportunity to expand the concession area if our goal is to keep food and drink off the pool deck, which generally for all sorts of different reasons, we don't want people eating and drinking on the food deck, specifically because it's against our pool code. So I still would, if there's probably 1 or 2 projects, this one is up there a little bit on realistically how we can do concessions at the pool next year, or if we do open, we may not be able, necessarily have concessions. It's not the end of the world if we don't, but I think it would make how we operate a little bit easier.
I guess my rationale is I wondered if we did open, if we are only at 25 or 50% capacity, if that would play into it. Also, I see a number of 25,000 for concrete and fencing. I didn't see anything kind of a plan that, I don't know if I want to say justified it or where that number is coming from. I don't know. So those are my thoughts.
Yeah, I was just gonna add that even, after COVID, I mean, we would still having a larger concession area would be a plus for the pool, given how small the enclosed area is, at least in my opinion.
True. And this was just moved back 1 year.
Right.
Any other questions? Alder, go forth.
I've gotten a question a few times about where the savings went from not operating the pool for 2020. Can you describe that?
Is that more of an operating budget question?
Yeah, probably. Is that appropriate? If it's not, that's fine.
Yeah, we kind of talked about during our finance committee meeting. There's really not large savings with closing the pool because we budget for it. We budgeted for the salaries too. So the portion we budget for the salaries is covered by the levy property taxes. So I think in the end we'll net about $10,000 in savings.
Okay.
With that, and that just goes back into your fund balance. We're not moving it somewhere else.
Anyone else? Any questions about anything we talked about tonight? We could certainly get something in. I'd say like next Thursday to get it in the next budget or the next packet.
Yeah, if you can get it by
Friday
noon
morning.
by noon on Thursday, if you could, so we can get the packet out. If you want a budget amendment for the first read, doesn't have to be like you said.
And you can certainly have a budget amendment for the second read too. So, anybody else? Okay, well then is there a motion to adjourn?
So move.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you, and we'll see you all on Tuesday.